Well, guys, it happened. Earlier this last week, I talked about the possibility of a lawsuit coming Sony's way for the PS5 DualSense controller drift. It's a gray area. I've been talking about this involving Nintendo and Microsoft because they're both going through lawsuits. People are stating that it is negligence on Nintendo and Microsoft's part to sell these controllers, that they're knowingly making them and selling them, knowing that in a few months they will be defective. That's essentially what these lawsuits say. It is a gray area. Again, I don't want to say that these companies can't be scumbags at times, can't be, consumer, against consumers, like anti-consumer, but there's no real way to prove a company to be deceptive or fraudulent when it comes to putting a product out. I couldn't imagine being a billion-dollar company and wanting to be like, let's make this controller the worst that it could be. I mean, a controller is everything when it comes to controlling a video game console. So I can't imagine that. But again, it is a gray area, and there are some pretty good arguments pointed out in some of these lawsuits and stuff. The reason why I cover it is because it's interesting. Any way you slice it, seeing stuff like this, it's really interesting because we've never seen the gaming industry subject to lawsuits like this over controllers. Again, I have said in the past, could you imagine if people threw lawsuits when the Atari was around, or the Nintendo 64, or the NES, or any of the retro systems? It would be crazy to think about that. So we're going to read this article. This is from IGN. This news is interesting. Anyways, at the time when I reported this, there was no lawsuit filed against Sony, but there was rumblings that it would probably be opening itself to it. And guess what? It's happened. So PS5 DualSense controller drift class action lawsuit filed against Sony. Suit calls Sony's conduct unlawful, deceptive, fraudulent, and unfair. And I've been loosely following all these drift law cases, like the Microsoft one, the Joy-Con drift one, which has been going on for over 2 years. They do provide a lot of interesting insight and stuff. So continuing, a lawsuit, a U.S. law firm has filed a class action lawsuit against Sony, alleging that the PS5 DualSense controller is defective due to drift, and that Sony was aware of the problem without disclosing it. The suit calls Sony's conduct fraudulent, deceptive, unlawful, and unfair. And again, I feel it is a bit of a gray area. You can't really prove that a company was being deceptive and stuff to you. I just don't see a way around that. This goes on to say, last week we reported on an investigation into DualSense drift by law firm Chemicals, Shorts, Crinner, and Donaldson Smith, which is CSK&D. The firm has now formally filed a class action suit in the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York. And documents provided to IGN, the suit is filed on behalf of plaintiff Mark Turner and all others similarly situated. And the names of defendants as Sony Corporation. I'm sorry, I cannot read. And names the defendants as Sony Corporation of America and Sony Interactive Entertainment. To IGN's knowledge, this is the first such suit filed against Sony regarding DualSense, and it may well not be the last. And I don't think it will be. I mean, Nintendo's involved in so many of these Joy-Con drift lawsuits. Once you get one your way, that's when they start to come. So we'll probably be subjected to a handful more of these class action lawsuits about DualSense drift and Microsoft drift and Joy-Con drift. Again, this could be bad, but at the same time, I don't see any of these lawsuits being settled or completed within this console generation. I think the DualSense will be gone, the Series X will be gone, and the Joy-Cons will be gone by the time we see any kind of resolution from any of them. Continuing on, it says the complaint describes the PS5 DualSense controller as defective as it contains a defect that results in characters or gameplay moving on the screen without user command or manual operation of the joystick, known popularly as controller drift. Further, the complaint alleges that Sony has, at all relevant times, been aware of the problems with drift through online consumer complaints, complaints made by consumers directly to it, and through its own pre-release testing. These are some pretty huge allegations. The suit also alleges that Sony's options for controller repair are too limited. So we did talk about how some people have been trying to get a hold of support, and it's been a nightmare for them. When consumers experience the drift defect, the options for repair are slim. Reportedly, Sony's PlayStation's dedicated portal for issues with the PS5 hardware, including the DualSense controller, is experiencing a backlog and redirecting consumers to contact a customer service agent via the contact page for PlayStation support. Customers are experiencing long wait times and having to deal with a maze of pre-recorded phone prompts before finally speaking with an agent concerning repairs for DualSense controller drift. And that was part of the article I read and talked about the other day. The writer said it was literally a nightmare for them to get a hold of anybody concerning repairs for their controller. That, I will say, is a pretty good complaint there. They're throwing that into the suit. So that is an interesting strategy. Let's see if it pays off. I don't know. Continuing on, it says the suit seeks a jury trial and monetary relief for damages suffered, declaratory relief, and public injunctive relief. The documents point to counts of breach of excess warranty, breach of implied warranty of merchantability, unjust enrichment, and violations of the Virginia Consumer Protection Act. That's a lot of stuff. The Virginia-based plaintiff Lamarck Turner reportedly bought their PS5 on or around February 5th and found that it was suffering from drift on the same day. So they bought it and in the same day claimed it was having drift. Turner apparently then contacted Sony customer service and was told to reset the game and console, but offered no further assistance. The issue not solved, Turner then bought a second DualSense. Had plaintiff been aware of the drift defect prior to purchasing the PS5, he otherwise would have not purchased a PS5 or would have paid substantially less for it. See, to me, it's just a gray area, man. I get it. There are defects in consoles, but to say that the company knowingly sold you a defective controller, to me, that's just a real gray area. This goes on to say one interesting extra detail. Turner admits to having agreed to Sony's terms and conditions when setting up the PS5, but reportedly sent a letter to Sony expressing an intent to opt out of any disputes with Sony through individual arbitration. A separate CSK&D class action suit against Nintendo regarding controller drift was recently compelled to arbitration before reaching the courts. It may be that a similar move isn't possible in this case, making it more likely to reach the requested jury trial. So that's interesting. He wrote a letter opting out. Is that a legal loophole? It seems like both ends, people of the complaints and the defendants, basically are trying every little loophole they can. So aside from Turner's report, the documents show a number of examples of social media comments regarding PS5 drift, with players complaining of drift out of the box or within days of use. CSK&D points to reports of drift on the PS4's DualShock 4 controllers too. I've never heard that. That's a first. Given that the sticks inside both controller models are similar, CSK&D adds that to its evidence of Sony's prior knowledge of the problem. The suit says there's no indication that Sony has developed a fix for drift in the DualSense. Rather, it appears to simply perform some sort of minor refurbishment and send the DualSense controller back to consumers still defective and susceptible to manifestation of the drift defect in the future. I'm sorry, it's been a long night. I've had no power all day. I'm making these videos while I have power. The suit calls for relief in the form of an order to stop Sony's unlawful, deceptive, fraudulent, and unfair business practices. the setup of a recall or free replacement program for DualSense controllers, compensatory damages, and more. So, again, it is a very gray area in my opinion. I haven't recalled any other time in gaming history when something like this has gone on. To me, it's interesting. That's why I'm loosely following it. But how can you prove that a company was neglectful or fraudulent on purpose? I don't know. Things like this, I feel just eventually Sony or Microsoft are just going to be like, you know what? Get off our backs. Here's some money. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section, guys. I'll see you on the next one. Thank you.